Hi there. Welcome back to my channel. Today, I bring to you 3 true disturbing Airbnb horror stories. These real-life tales will make you think twice before your next booking. First, we have Jake's terrifying encounter with an intruder hiding in his Airbnb attic. Next, follow Max as he faces an eerie and unsettling presence in a remote cabin. Finally, experience the horror of a cozy Airbnb that turns into a night of pure terror. Stay tuned and get ready for some spine-chilling stories that will keep you on the edge of your seat. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the bell icon for more creepy tales.
Story 1. The Haunting at Maplewood.
The road stretched on endlessly, a ribbon of asphalt cutting through the sleepy countryside. It had been a long drive, and Jake Langston's eyes felt heavy as he finally spotted the turnoff to Maplewood. Jake was a tall, broad-shouldered man in his early 30s, with sandy hair and a kind smile. He had been driving for days, hoping to reach his final destination by the next morning. Exhausted and in need of a place to rest, Jake had booked a last-minute Airbnb in this remote part of the state. As Jake pulled up to the house, he couldn't help but feel a sense of relief. The house was old, with peeling paint and a creaky porch, but it was a place to sleep. He grabbed his small backpack from the back seat and headed inside. The moment he stepped through the door, Jake was hit by a foul odor. It was like something rotten was hidden away, just out of sight. Jake wrinkled his nose and did a quick walkthrough of the house. The smell was stronger in the bedroom, so he decided to sleep on the couch in the living room. He laid out a throw blanket and settled down, hoping to get some much-needed rest. As Jake was getting comfortable, a loud thump echoed through the house. He sat up, more confused than scared. It was too loud to be just the house settling. Jake stood up and walked down the hallway, peeking into each room. Everything seemed normal, but the sound had unsettled him. Jake returned to the couch, telling himself it was nothing. He pulled out his phone and started planning his route for the next few days. Just as he began to relax, another thump, identical to the first, reverberated through the walls. This time, Jake decided to investigate more thoroughly. He flicked on the lights and inspected the walls and ceilings, but found nothing unusual. "Whatever it is, it's not my problem," Jake muttered to himself. He turned off the lights, lay back down, and soon fell into a deep sleep. Jake woke up suddenly, his body stiff with fear. He felt a strange sensation, a bad feeling in his gut. Slowly, he opened his eyes and froze. A man stood right above him, staring into his eyes. Jake's heart pounded in his chest. The moment was brief but terrifying. The man sprinted from the side of the couch and out the front door. Jake jumped up and ran after him, but quickly lost sight of the man in the dense trees surrounding the house. Shaken, Jake closed the door and locked it. He grabbed his phone to call for help, but stopped when he noticed something out of the corner of his eye. A folding ladder was hanging in the middle of the hallway, leading up to the attic. "Why is that down?" Jake whispered to himself. He wasted no time and dialed 911, explaining the situation to the operator. Help was on the way, but it would take some time to reach such a remote location. Jake decided to check the attic. He grabbed a flashlight and cautiously climbed the ladder. The attic was dark and dusty, with cobwebs hanging from the rafters. As he scanned the room with his flashlight, Jake saw a small pile of blankets and a few empty food cans in the corner. The man had been living up here, hiding right above him. Suddenly, Jake heard a creak from the other side of the attic. He swung his flashlight around and saw a pair of eyes glinting in the darkness. The man was still there, hiding behind some old furniture. Jake's heart raced as he slowly backed away, trying not to make any sudden movements. The man stepped forward into the beam of light. He was thin, with unkempt hair and wild eyes. "Who are you?" Jake demanded, trying to keep his voice steady. The man didn't answer. Instead, he lunged at Jake, who stumbled backward and fell down the ladder. Jake hit the floor hard, pain shooting through his arm. He scrambled to his feet and ran to the front door, throwing it open just as the man reached the bottom of the ladder. Jake dashed outside, yelling for help. The eerie quiet of the night was broken only by his desperate cries. He ran to his car and locked himself inside. Watching as the man stood in the doorway of the house, staring at him with those same wild eyes. Moments later, the distant sound of sirens filled the air. The man turned and disappeared back into the house. Jake's heart pounded as the police car pulled up, its lights flashing. Officers quickly surrounded the house and went inside. Minutes felt like hours as Jake waited. Finally, the officers emerged, leading the man in handcuffs. One of the officers approached Jake, who was still sitting in his car. "Are you all right, sir?" the officer asked. Jake nodded, though he still felt shaken. "Who is he? Why was he in the house?" The officer sighed. "We don't know yet. He hasn't said a word, but it looks like he was squatting in the attic for a while." Jake shuddered at the thought. He thanked the officers and drove away, deciding to find a hotel to spend the night. As he drove, he couldn't shake the image of those wild eyes staring down at him. He knew he wouldn't be able to sleep easily for a long time. In the days that followed, Jake learned more about the man. He was a drifter with a troubled past, moving from place to place and living wherever he could find shelter. The authorities couldn't piece together much of his story, but Jake felt a deep sense of unease knowing how close he had come to something truly horrifying. Jake never returned to that remote house in Maplewood. He continued his journey, but the memory of that night stayed with him, a haunting reminder of how quickly a sense of safety can be shattered.
Story 2. The Stranger at Timber Ridge.
The sun dipped low over the horizon, casting long shadows across the dense forest that lined the narrow road to Timber Ridge. Max Turner, a young man with dark hair and a friendly smile, was on his way to an Airbnb cabin deep in the woods. Max loved hiking and had planned a backpacking trip with a few friends. They were supposed to meet at this cabin and stay for 2 nights before heading out for the rest of the week. Max had driven all day from Denver and was ready to stretch his legs. When Max pulled up to the cabin, he felt a sense of satisfaction. The cabin was plain but cozy, nestled among towering trees with only the sounds of nature around. Max parked his truck around the side of the cabin, grabbed his gear, and brought it inside. The inside was just as he'd expected, small, a bit worn, but perfect for a couple of nights. That evening, Max got straight into bed, excited about the adventures ahead. He fell asleep quickly and woke up early the next morning. Max's goal for the day was to scout out the first portion of the trail where his friends would meet him the following day. After making a cup of coffee and relaxing for a bit, Max headed out. The trailhead was a short walk down the main road. The path looked clear and dry, so Max didn't hike too far before turning back. He had been gone for about an hour when he returned to the path leading to the cabin. As he approached, he noticed something strange. A truck was parked right out front. Max quickened his pace, unsure what was going on. When he reached the truck, he peered inside but saw no one. He looked around but didn't see anyone nearby. His heart raced as he cautiously approached the front door, which was still locked. Inside, everything seemed untouched, which was a relief but also puzzling. Max pulled out his phone and opened the Airbnb app, messaging the host to ask if anyone else was supposed to be there. While waiting for a response, Max checked the windows and doors again, making sure they were secure. Hours passed, and the sun began to set. Finally, at around 8 p.m., Max received a message: no one else should be there. Max's stomach churned with anxiety. He hoped it was a misunderstanding, but deep down, he knew something was wrong. He couldn't shake the feeling of being watched and decided he couldn't stay the night. He began packing his things when he heard footsteps on the porch. Max froze, listening as the steps came closer. No knock followed, just silence. He cautiously walked up to the door and peeked through the window. A tall man stood on the doorstep, facing away from the door, looking out towards the truck. An eerie feeling washed over Max. He took a few steps back, trying to move quietly to call 911. On his third step, a floorboard creaked loudly. The man outside shuffled around, and the doorknob began to shake violently. Max ran to the bedroom and locked the door, dialing 911 as the man continued to bang on the front door. Suddenly, the noise stopped, and Max heard the truck start up and drive away. The police arrived quickly but found no trace of the man. They assured Max they would patrol the area, but he knew he couldn't stay there. He left the cabin that night and checked into a hotel. The man was never caught, and Max couldn't stop thinking about where he had been hiding all that time. Was he in the woods, watching? Or had he been closer than Max realized? Max's friends met him at the hotel the next day, and they continued with their trip, but the experience at Timber Ridge haunted Max. He couldn't shake the feeling of being watched, and every rustle in the woods set his nerves on edge. The memory of the stranger at the cabin stayed with him, a chilling reminder of how quickly safety could be shattered. Max decided he would never stay in such a remote cabin again. The forest no longer felt like a place of adventure, but a place of hidden dangers. The man's face, though seen only briefly, was etched in Max's memory, a haunting figure that would forever change how he viewed the wilderness.
Story 3. The Mystery of Pine Hollow Cabin.
Max Johnson lived in the flat, boring plains of Kansas. He worked hard every day and dreamed of taking a break in the mountains. Max loved nature and had always wanted to visit Colorado. One day, he decided to treat himself to a short getaway vacation. He looked online for Airbnbs in smaller towns that wouldn't be too expensive. After searching for a while, Max found a cabin in a small town called Pine Hollow. It was a 10-hour drive from his home. Excited, Max packed his bags and set off on the road. The drive was long and tiring, but he couldn't wait to reach the cabin. As Max entered Pine Hollow, he felt a bit uneasy. The town was much smaller than he had expected. There were a few rows of old houses along a dark, empty road. The wooden power lines looked like they might fall over any moment. It almost seemed like a ghost town, especially at night. Max followed the directions and found the gravel path leading to his Airbnb. The cabin was in a cul-de-sac with 4 other small homes. He parked his car, grabbed his bags, and walked up to the front door. The cabin was tiny, just 500 square feet, but Max liked the cozy setup. After putting his things in the bedroom, Max went to the kitchen to fill his water bottle. As he stood at the counter, he heard a car coming down the gravel path. He walked to the window and saw a pair of headlights slowly approaching. The car parked in front of the house next to his Airbnb, and the headlights turned off. Oddly, nobody got out of the car. Max waited for a minute, then decided it was none of his business. He went back to the kitchen, sat on a bar stool, and pulled out his phone. He texted his family to let them know he had arrived safely. After responding to a few more messages, Max decided to call it a night. Max unpacked some things and started getting ready for bed. As he was changing, he heard a car door open and close outside, followed by footsteps. The footsteps came up close to his cabin, but then stopped abruptly. Max assumed the person was just going to the house next door. Feeling tired, Max got into bed and fell asleep within half an hour. The night was quiet, and he didn't hear anything else. But in the middle of the night, Max woke up with a strange feeling. He felt uneasy and couldn't understand why. The house was silent except for the light creaking of the wooden walls. Max sat up in bed, his eyes slowly adjusting to the darkness. He scanned the room, trying to figure out what was making him feel so unsettled. Then, he noticed the uncovered window. Behind the glass, a pair of eyes were staring back at him. Max's heart jumped, and his body froze. For a moment, he couldn't move. The figure outside the window stood still, just watching him. Then, it slowly moved away. Max could barely hear the footsteps, and it didn't sound like the person was leaving. Max quickly got out of bed and started getting dressed. Suddenly, he heard a sound outside his bedroom door. Heavy footsteps were moving down the hallway. Max stood still, listening as the footsteps went from inside the house to the gravel path outside. Then, he heard a car start and drive away. After waiting for a few minutes, Max carefully opened the bedroom door and walked down the hallway. The front door was wide open, and the house was silent. Max felt a chill run down his spine. He had never heard the person by the window leave, but it seemed like they were gone. Max reported the incident to a local police station 20 minutes away. He told them everything, but there was never any follow-up. The police couldn't figure out who the person was, what they wanted, or why they broke in. Max decided to leave Pine Hollow the next morning. He couldn't shake the feeling of being watched and didn't want to spend another night in the cabin. As he drove away, he felt relieved to be leaving the creepy town behind. The memory of that night stayed with Max for a long time. He couldn't understand why someone would watch him through the window and then break into the house. He wondered if the person had been hiding somewhere outside, or if they had been in the cabin all along. Max never returned to Pine Hollow. The experience left him wary of staying in remote cabins. He loved nature and still enjoyed hiking, but he always made sure to stay in places where he felt safe. The mystery of Pine Hollow Cabin remained unsolved, a chilling reminder of the unknown dangers that can lurk in the shadows.
Thanks for watching. Please like, share, and subscribe to listen to similar stories in future.